Hi, Lisa.
Hello, hello. Everything is going well today.
Yeah, so
And and record.
Recording in progress.
Hello, I am Lisa Sortanovich, the Velocity Detective, and this is the Better Practice podcast. It's where we talk about how to really create that thriving business that you went and spent so much of your time and energy putting together, but while focusing on your family at the same time. Today, I have with me a special guest, Anthony. Tell me a little bit about you, Anthony.
hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me on the show, Lisa. So a little bit about me. Born and raised in New York City, out in Queens. Live in New York State for most of my life. Now here, moved to down south in Georgia, 4 years in. And in terms of finances, figured this is what I want to do pretty early on in high school. And other side hobbies, will try to weave into helping my clients understand things a little better on the finance side of things. Is being a runner and a marathoner myself. I understand kind of the long-term perspective to kind of go through from the plan of the training to get to the marathon day. No different with for financial planning. We don't see that reward until the very end, but the reward that we do see has been slowly, like slow dripped throughout the course of the training period.
And but even along that path, whether it's training for the marathon or building your financial future, you still get the benefit of that training along the way. For with regards to the marathon, it's you have better health, your
Yes.
cardiovascular system, you eat better because you want your time to improve and so on. Um, so when we're thinking about financial planning and family businesses, um, there might be some unique things about having a family-owned business that are a little bit different than when you think about financial planners and just, I'm going to call it the regular Joe, right? That
Mhm.
that maybe has a W-2 job, and as opposed to somebody that is a sole proprietor or a small or medium-sized business that's more family-owned. What kind of things are different there?
Definitely would be the family dynamics. So if we're working with, let's say, someone that's just a regular W-2 and we're really looking at just his own family's perspective, that's a very small circle or party or interest that we're trying to appease. Whereas if we're working with a family business, especially when parents and kids are involved or siblings, I mean, just any family, or I mean, how often do we run into siblings where they 100% agree on everything? Well, that's rarely ever the case, or even in between couples. So every additional member is involved or added into the family business, it adds an extra layer of complexity. So that when advisors, not just on the financial side of things, whether it's an accountant, an attorney, or anyone coming in to consult with the business, we have to take into perspective. Okay, who is really the influencer? Who is there really doing the work? And at the end of the day, sometimes you kind of get one or two bad apples out of the whole barrel where they're really just, to put it bluntly, not really contributing other than to the drama. So these are things that we have to take into account for specifically to a family business above and beyond just a regular average Joe.
That makes sense, especially if you're thinking about legacy planning and maybe even the kids don't even yet work in the business. Well, do they want to be a part of it at all, right? Even going forward, and if so, then how do we plan for that? How do we plan if there's more than one of them? Who gets what, and how the business works? And I mean, notwithstanding how wealth building should be around them. So it's important, I would think, to not only involve your financial planner like you, Anthony, but also your CPA for tax purposes, as well as on the legal side to make sure that your structure of your business would be set up correctly.
No, absolutely. It's really a concert or dance of other professionals to work in or work together. If anyone is not even on the same page, the best well-laid plan, all it takes is one party to not be aware of what everyone else is doing for all the plan to kind of really fall apart. And along with that, kind of you touch a little bit on the head with regarding to the kids who may or may not have any interest in the business, while the parents kind of going in assuming, oh yeah, they're definitely going to come in and they want to inherit the business. And did you have the conversation with them yet? And sometimes even when it comes to the perspective towards the kids themselves, my question to them is always kind of pulling them to the side is, are you stepping into this because you are generally in love with it, you're passionate just as your parents or grandparents are, or do you feel kind of obligated because you're now the third or fourth generation holding the torch and you don't want to let your family down? So these are more sensitive questions that goes well and above and beyond just kind of the legal statutes or financial planning or wealth preservation. It really comes down to the burnout of the next generation. And sometimes the question could be, or the suggestion is, okay, well, if they're more passionate about some other project, some other business, a different perspective to the founders or the owners of the companies to them is it more important to keep the business just in the bloodline or be able to sell the business and have the assets to then give the next generation a next step up and continue that legacy and continue that wealth building? So I mean, there's different ways to look through this, and I think the stereotype is, oh, we're just going to keep it in the family. Well, sometimes it might be a detriment.
Right. If that next generation has a different passion and therefore the drive behind it, even if you did give it to the next generation and while you're alive they kept it going in respect out of for you or what have you, what's to say they're not going to go ahead and just sell it anyways? And if that's the case, let's think that through before you give it to them so that we can build the business in such a way that it gives the most value for everyone involved.
Absolutely, because I think sometimes we make the mistake where we just leave a lot of money on the table. And that's another side of wealth that we don't necessarily see, that, oh, there's a down X percentage of my portfolio. Well, it's kind of invisible in a way because we just don't take that into account.
And that would be such a shame, especially if it was already a multi-generational endeavor, and your father and you and his father already put all this energy into it, and then just because the next generation down isn't quite as enamored with this particular thing shouldn't mean that you wouldn't want it to succeed in some way, even if it doesn't have to be with them, and that they can still benefit. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So tell me then, in general, though, okay, so we talked about specifically for the business, but in general, what does financial planning really even consist of?
Well, we can kind of start right from the top with at least what the public perspective or stereotype is, oh, financial planning, you guys just do either budgeting or investments, or those who kind of dip their toe further in on the pools, oh, maybe a little bit of insurance. I like using the analogy or metaphor of four legs of a chair or a stool. So everyone already knows the first leg, the investment side, the second leg a little bit on the insurance side. But when reviewing for insurance, it's not just kind of the traditional life, long-term care, disability, they're all important, but also being able to review the client's home and auto, or what we will call property and casualty, especially if as business owners or one who holds a lot of assets, like umbrella coverage for a business owner, liability coverage. Because at the end of the day, I like using I use analogies. Before we go and kind of design a plan to go out and conquer the world, we need legal and insurance protection as kind of building a wall, a castle, or a moat to really build, or rather protect what we've accumulated, rather than any random person or event coming in and raiding our supplies. So that's kind of what the insurance and legal perspectives are. And then the third leg would be, of course, working with CPAs on the tax planning side for the business. and then also creating a tax efficient manner to either sell the business or transfer the estate for the client. And then very lastly, which is probably the most important leg, would be the legal side of things. And sometimes when I address that, people go, well, wait a minute, that has nothing to do with investments. Well, that's actually the most important, because when talking to a family, especially for young families with kids involved, then the conversation to them is, okay, while we are designing this financial plan for their future, let's say retirement or other financial goals, do they have a will? Because if they don't, guess what? They haven't designated anyone to be a potential guardian for the kids. God forbid, something happens to both the parents. Now the question usually, or the answer is like, what? Who do you want on you nowhere near your kids? And it's like a long list. I go, all right, okay, well, unless you write it down of who you want to take that important role, guess who's going to be deciding that? The courts. And along with that, having a trustee regarding to holding the assets for their kids' behalf. Because if we fast forward time, would we trust an 18-year-old with a blank check with all of their money? Oh, probably want to put some more thought behind that. So that's on the personal side of things. And then when it comes to business owner, particularly when there's partners involved, buy-sell agreements between each other, and also having structuring the business in a way for legal or liability protection for the owners, and potential sell or transition later on. So that overall, the legal side of the leg is just as important, if not more so, than all the other legs combined, because at the end of the day, that is the wall protecting all of the assets that the client has accumulated and worked hard for.
And when you're thinking about that legal side, uh, it's not just around the business, of course. It's all of the other assets, like you mentioned, the will. And your children are should be very important to you in order for their upbringing, and but again, I liked how you mentioned that. Would you just give an 18-year-old a blank check? Not too many 18-year-olds can handle uh, just, especially after they've just lost both parents, right? To have to deal with all of that. So having those in place, along with some other things that aren't even necessarily on the legal side or directly the financial planning side, but things like you know contingency plans for if there is some sort of you're not incapacity to be able to take the reins. Who should they contact? Or again, even an 18-year-old, while legally they have the capacity to be the business owner, do they have enough wisdom behind them to be able to not just run it into the ground? So how can we help them both from your side of things, the planning piece, to make sure that it's not just focused on the dollars on that bottom line, but that holistic view of preserving the wealth?
That's a really good question. At the end of the day, it's really working in tandem with all other professionals in the legal, the accounting, even stepping if we're going to go into the business side of things. There's all forms of different business consultants that would help them depending on the size and the scope of the business. So we're dealing with a business with many employees and high revenue, or particularly in manufacturing, then we may actually require someone that's experienced in HR, employee benefits, employee in corporate culture, having board of directors. There's a whole series of professionals to really bring in to work in tandem together. The best analogy I like using would be think of a quarterback to run a team, or hiring an architect to really draw out the blueprint or design for what the client wants that perfect house to look like, or in this case, what their perfect financial situation to look like. And that's what kind of the role of a financial planner or their advisor will come in. And then the next step after that is, okay, well, I've got this blueprint, but I don't know how I'm going to go about hiring a general contractor to go and find the supplies and the labor, because most people, they don't, when they get a blueprint, it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go get a shovel, start digging ground or breaking ground. So they would hire someone to help them find the right laborers, the supplies, materials to build it. And again, that's where you bring all these other professionals. So when we're thinking of just building a house, there's a whole team to really make that happen. Well, that's no different when it comes to financial planning. It's not just me, it's all the other professionals from their respective specialties to really make it happen.
I really like the idea of having that team approach. It If you try and rely on just your financial planner or just your tax preparer, and you don't have the other people on the team that have a really good understanding about what you want for your future, then you're going to only have kind of like the analogy that you used earlier, that stool. Well, having one leg of it makes for a very wobbly seat.
Yeah.
Uh, are there any, if you had to not have one of those legs, which one would it be?
As crazy as it sounds, it would be an investment side. Because if we're working with, let's say, a business owner, and sometimes a lot of their assets are tied up in the business, and they consider it as part of their retirement and an investment. I mean, at the end of the day, we can somewhat get away with that, because if you don't have proper insurance coverage or legal protection, it doesn't matter what kind of return the investment guy or gal would get them. All it takes is one lawsuit or liability claim, and all those investments will go out the door.
And if you don't have your business and your will set up properly from the legal side,
Mhm.
then you put other things at risk, either other businesses that you own or your personal assets. And so that piece, and again, the tax side of it, if you aren't filing your taxes properly, and you're not in compliance with all of those reporting requirements, you put yourself at even more risk. So it's interesting to think of a financial planner saying, yep, nope, it's everybody else first. And then let's make sure that what we have, we can grow
Mhm.
and keep. What's your take on grow versus keep?
The first default should be on the defensive, on the keeping side, because at the end of the day, any life, or we can't control life events that happen. I mean, who would have predicted 2020, a pandemic would shut down so many businesses? No one has a crystal ball on that. So at the end of the day, it's always better to mitigate loss than to chase after gains, because here's a quick math trick, is that when I would ask this question, okay, so if a portfolio loses 50%, how much would that portfolio need to earn the next year just to break even? And just most people's answer, oh, if I lost 50, I need to gain 50. Well, actually, no, you had to gain 100% to make up with what you got, to make up the losses just to break even. So really, it's to protect and preserve what you've built. Then once all those walls and moats and whatever alligators or piranhas you want to throw in there to really protect your castle, then we can really draw a blueprint to really go out and conquer, or in this case, grow.
Do you, as we're thinking about that growth side, is there like a standard strategy that everybody should kind of like go with, or is it all individually focused?
It's got to be individually focused, and I mean, some people could be more risk averse. Even a single blip in the market, they start sweating bullets. Whereas someone else who's very comfortable riding the roller coaster, and then when they see a down market, they see as things kind of going on discount, and they double down even more. So it's really ranges across the board when it comes to personality, and some may even not even feel any remotely comfortable having any portfolio that's kind of on paper. They want to be able to see real assets, which is why there are those clients who much prefer putting most of their money in their business or real estate, because hey, Anthony, I want to be able to see and touch my investment, as opposed to something just printed on a piece of paper where it's very abstract.
Well, that makes sense. And I would assume it also has to do with the vision for their own future. If they may want to leave their business to their children, but they want to spend all the money because they can't take it with them. Well, that's a
Mhm.
whole different way of wealth building, I would believe, than somebody that wants to leave $10 million to the next generation.
Mhm. Yeah, there's definitely different perspectives on that. I'm always biased towards, as you mentioned, I want to say pushing, but trying to convince the client that hey, you can't take it with you. It's best to really enjoy the quality of life that you want. And here's kind of a lesson that was passed on to my mentor when addressing to any grandparent who may have, let's say, XYZ funds set aside, and always ask them the question, hey, what's kind of this little bucket or pool of money for? And sometimes the answer would be, oh, that's for my grandkid or my grandson or granddaughter to kind of help them out for college expenses or a little treat after the fact. And then he would always suggest, well, follow up with this question is, if it's for them, do you think they would find more value getting the money after the fact from grandma and grandpa, or would have rather you spent the money to spend time with them, let's say Disney World or a trip somewhere, and build that experience and memory? And someone would take a pause and oh, I never thought of it that way. I mean, at the end of the day, I know it sounds crazy. Here's a financial guy dissuading people from investments and telling them to go spend money. But at the end of the day, it's what is really the financial resources money for? Is to build those experiences and those memories and have a life full well lived.
Oh, absolutely. And on most everybody's tombstone, they're not gonna wish they had spent more time making more money versus I wish I spent more time with those that I love. And we can make more money, but we cannot make time, at least not yet.
Mhm.
I'm hoping maybe with AI coming along, it's gonna have some impact on that. But as of right now, time is our most precious commodity, and spending it with those that we love takes money one way or the other. So I love the do you want to spend the money creating those memories, or does it make you feel better? Maybe maybe you don't like your grandkids or something. I don't know, but you
Mhm.
want to make sure they're cared for in some way. I suppose that would that helps me see it's so individual
Mhm.
that you can't just say here's a formula to make everybody have the best wealth building experience, right? It definitely depends on the person, their feelings currently, as well as how they see their future. So, um, with that in mind, are there any like stereotypes or myths about the financial planning process that I may have that are like, can you debunk some of them?
Oh, sorry, I don't know if there's enough time, time in this whole ordeal getting me on my soapbox here. But the first I think we really touched upon is assuming that all people in finance are only interested in talking about investment, which while at the end of the day, it's important and I'm passionate about that. But the biggest bang for the buck impact for the client is not necessarily only investments. The conversation really needs to be about building that capital, which is the legal side, the tax and the insurance, risk mitigation or loss mitigation. So that's the first one. The second one is in terms of passing on wealth. It's more than just kind of the dollars in the sense that we touch a little bit about memories and experience. But also at the end of the day, it's not like either or where I either pass on some wealth or no wealth at all. I think again, it's a little bit biased on my side, is the best preservation in terms of passing on wealth is the values and lifestyle lessons as opposed to just a dollar amount. Because at the
Uh,
end of the day, you probably have seen a lot of generation, and so have I, where XYZ trust fund babies or someone who wins the lotto, they're back to where they were a year later because they were not given the most valuable wealth building tool, and that is the skill set and a mindset to preserve and build more wealth. So the number one priority isn't so much let's design this trust or this kind of life insurance policy and that plan, all these kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine of preserving and passing on the wealth. The number one lesson should be providing the next generation the skills, then the values and the habit of how to
Mhm.
grow wealth. And if they have those skills and tools, you don't have to worry about making sure that that we're passing XYZ dollars because they will go out and build it their own.
So that financial literacy, the education around money and having a positive money mindset, those kind of all play into being able to transition wealth or to pass it on. It's kind of like the old adage of you teach the person to fish and they can feed themselves for life kind of
Mhm.
thing. If I just get, if I just pass on the wealth, but I didn't bother to spend the energy teaching them what to do with it, well, did it really serve the purpose that I intended for it to do?
So, and then the very last one would be uh, thinking that someone needs to have like a minimum threshold to have a conversation with a financial advisor or a planner. It's like, well, if someone's already they're worth 10 or hundreds of millions, well, guess what? I think they're doing a pretty good job if they manage to get there without any guidance. Maybe I could take some lessons. But at the end of the day, it's actually the people who are just starting out feeling a little, I guess, intimidated or just kind of lost in the process. The most important step is taking that first step and having that conversation and interview multiple advisors to find the one that best fit. But don't be intimidated by thinking, "Oh, I'm not a millionaire yet. I'm just not worth having a conversation with an advisor." No, that's if anything, it's a lot of people get to build up to their wealth. They did it by a lot of help or a concert of professionals to help them get there.
Absolutely. It's even in the analogy to the business world, it's almost better if you get with the professionals before you start the business. It's a lot easier than if you've stumbled along for several years and you've tried to do it yourself for so long because I mean you can learn all of the things that need to happen around the legal side and the risk side and the tax side. But if you instead spend a little bit of money on those professionals up front, then your business is already set up for success. And I would think in the wealth building side, if you talk to someone early on, rather than waiting until you felt ready, whatever that means, right? Or worthy even, right?
Mhm.
Um, well, we can start building now. I mean, the whole concept of compound interest, the earlier you get started, the better off you are in the long run.
Mhm. And then to kind of piggyback off of that is there's no such thing as simply too late. It's the time would be now. What's a good time? Now.
Yeah.
Now would be the best time.
Fantastic, fantastic. Um, so Anthony, when we think about financial planning, even inside the business, one of the first things that comes to my mind is even from the tax savings perspective, things like 401ks and simple IRAs. Are you the kind of guy that would be able to address those business type questions?
Yes, I'm also able to be able to set these 401ks or retirement plans and be able to consult with that and also help even their participants to give them guidance as opposed to just, oh, here's a plan, here's an enrollment, off you go. It's like, well, I didn't go to school for this. No one's helping me with this. So there's an extra level of service that I also provide, not just for the business owners, but for their employees.
Which is, as we are in this turmoil of times with regards to trying to attract and retain talented staff, it's really important that if we think that some of these types of things would be value to our business with regards to our employees, it's the type of culture that we want to build within our organizations, then having someone like you on again as part of our power connections, we really want to reach out to you. So tell me, how can we do that?
Oh, many ways. you reach out to me just on my email, which is my full name, Anthony Chen, last name spelled Chen at lfnllc.com, or connect directly with me on LinkedIn, which is just my name. Maybe there's like 3 Anthony Chens out there, or 4, but it's the one with kind of the glasses and that Lighthouse Financial.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Anthony, it has been such a pleasure to have you, and I really would love for you to come back and talk to us a little bit more sometime on that business side and how we can utilize financial planning specifically inside of our business, not just as the owner of the business.
Certainly, thank you. It's been an honor, and thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
Thank you so much. This is Lisa Sretanovich, the Velocity Detective, and this has been the Better Practice Podcast. Yes.
Recording stopped.
Okay. That piece is done.
All right.
So since we didn't have any participants, there are no questions. At least not that I have seen. Nobody showed up. Oh, look there. I was gonna put your contact information in the chat, which I will do, and I lost it somewhere along the along the way. Well, thanks for hanging out with me. Since there's nobody else here, I'm probably going to call it a wrap on both sides, the lunch with Lisa as well as with you. But I really would love for you to come back and talk maybe more about how financial planning within the business helps. I mean, obviously it helps the owner with regards to tax and stuff like that, as well as wealth building, but you know, how specifically how it can help organizations, solo even organizations, really move forward better or something. I don't know. Think about it.
Okay, very well. Well, thank you again.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for the update on